welcome to Undivided on this election night. Some good results, some bad results. King County, I don't know what's up with their election website, but we were waiting for results and they just weren't coming, but we got some of the key ones finally. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to focus tonight on some of the results in races that we've covered a lot on the show that I think have broader implications, and then we'll dive into some other individual ones of interest. But I've got to start in the city of Seattle. So 7 of 9 Seattle City Council seats. These are district seats. The other 2 are citywide races. They're not on the ballot this year. So you've got district seats 1 through 7. The biggest race to me tonight is the race for District 7 in downtown Seattle. I have said to anyone who will hear that I don't think Andrew Lewis should keep his seat. And at the time being, the results are not looking good for Andrew Lewis. The current election results in District 7 in the city of Seattle, Andrew Lewis has 44%. Bob Kettle has 56% of the vote. Now, look, I wouldn't read too terribly much into that. I don't think that's where Lewis wants to be. But I've been around enough Seattle City Council races to watch 10-point swings. And so certainly this isn't the end for Andrew Lewis, but I'm sure that Bob Kettle is pretty happy tonight. And look, I think when we talk so much about that particular race, it's about more than downtown Seattle. It is about the economic engine of the entire state. It is about what really has been a city council and a councilman in Andrew Lewis who you don't know on any given day which way the wind is blowing for him. I have talked over and over about a couple votes that to me make him unqualified to continue to serve in that job. In 2019, I think we have the clip here, he campaigned for his job on the promise to hire more police officers.
We need to hire more police officers in the city. I see on a daily basis that there's parts of our city where we don't have the staffing numbers to have effective community policing strategies and deter the kinds of crimes of opportunity that are prolific.
Yeah, and then you turn around 6 months later and pledge to defund SPD by 50%. So that just shows you what kind of flip-floppery is. This is him in a drug vote.
I came out here on the dais today fully prepared to vote for this measure, because I do think it is generally proper that we reconcile our SMC to the state law. But with the ending of community court without any additional process, I just can't do it today. I just can't.
And thankfully and hopefully a lot of downtown Seattle voters just couldn't fill in the circle for you. I mean, that was back in June when they had an opportunity, given the immense drug crisis in Seattle, to actually put a law in the books that would allow Seattle police officers to arrest people who didn't want help when they were using drugs out in the open. And he, out of nowhere, after telling people he'd vote for it, cast the deciding no vote. So Andrew Lewis, right now, after the first ballot drop at 8 p.m., down to Bob Kettle, 44% to 56%. I know there's some happy business owners downtown. All right, let's move on to District 2 in Seattle. What I think is an opportunity to get the most fringe member of the Seattle City Council who's running for re-election off. Someone who is the most ideological besides Shama Sawant, who's leaving anyway, and that is Tammy Morales. So District 2 is a really important district because it encompasses Seattle's Chinatown International District, where there's been a lot of drug use issues, a lot of crime and homelessness issues, and it encompasses a lot of South Seattle where the majority of the shootings are happening and the violent crime. So again, this is a good result, I think, so far on night one. Tammy Morales, the incumbent there, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, or I guess she calls herself Democratic Socialist, not a full-blown socialist. She's still keeping one foot in the Democrat pond. She has 46%, Tanya Wu, 54%. And Wu is the candidate that the business community and members of the Chinatown International District have really rallied behind. And she's been campaigning on the really sole issue of public safety and trying to, Tammy Morales has been pretty absent in her district, and I think Tanya Wu has been trying to fill that void, especially in the international district, for people who really feel like they've been forgotten and left behind by Tammy Morales as she pursues her ideological agenda. So Tanya Wu, she was a good campaigner. Let's see if that holds and pays off, but she is leading Tammy Morales 54%. I also want to go to the third incumbent that's actually on the ballot for Seattle voters, and that's in District 6, which is like Magnolia, Ballard neighborhood. Ton of issues up there related to homelessness. Look, Councilman Dan Strauss, he's not my biggest concern, but I don't think any incumbent should get to keep their jobs. This race up there, though, is very, very close. Dan Strauss, 49% of the vote. Pete Hanning right now has 51% of the vote. So that's obviously too close to really make anything of that. But if Dan Strauss keeps his job at the end of the day, I mean, I think he's been a flip-flopper as well. He flip-flopped on police defunding. He, at the same forum Andrew Lewis did, said that he wanted more police officers in 2019. 6 months later, caved to activists, said he wanted to defund by 50%. So I think it's just a matter of, one of the compliments, if you will, that I've had for Socialist City Councilman Shama Sawant is, at least when she says something, you know that she's not going to change her mind. It's really hard to know what direction a city is going to go in when you constantly have council members who flip-flop depending on what activists show up and scream the loudest. We'll check one more Seattle City Council race before we get to the Snohomish County Sheriff's race, which we've become personally invested in. I just want to talk quickly about Seattle City Council District 3 because it is Shama Sawant's district. Remember, she's not running for re-election. So I've said that, man, I mean, that's a win for the people of District 3. No matter what happens tonight, I think it's a win to have someone who has been so poisonous to Seattle city politics opt to not run again. So what I would consider the more common sense candidate in the District 3 race is Joy Hollingsworth, and she is ahead 58% of the vote. That's a pretty decisive, and she has a lot of ties to the community. So that's a pretty decisive lead on night one. Again, I've seen Seattle City Council races swing quite a bit as ballots continue to be counted. But for Joy Hollingsworth up in District 3, I think that would be a welcome change for people who have had Shama Sawant for far too long. All right, we'll get back to some of the issues at play in the Seattle City Council race momentarily, but let's talk about the Snohomish County Sheriff's race. Again, this is just an initial ballot drop, but Sheriff Adam Fortney is currently trailing his challenger, Susanna Johnson, 48% to 52%. Again, that's pretty close. But as we talked about on the show both this week and last week, Sheriff Fortney has been hit with some pretty nasty campaign ads here in the final days and weeks. Democrats have come in hot and heavy for Johnson to try to get her across the finish line. I had friends up in Snohomish County who were getting texts from the Alliance for Gun Responsibility telling them not to reelect the right-wing Sheriff Adam Fortney. So Fortney has been going against a lot of big money spending in this race. We had mentioned last week the reason why I say we have kind of a personal investment is there was an article that the Everett Herald put out that was supposed to be a news article but was really just an attack piece where it was calling Adam Fortney a controversial far-right sheriff with constitutional leanings and just painting his opponent as just, a cop with 3 decades of experience. And so we decided after that, because one of the things that is really bothersome to me is this rush really from both sides, both parties, but we see it a lot in the state with Democrats, to just paint anyone who's even the slightest bit right of center as a far right fringe lunatic. And so we rallied, you guys rallied. We got like 70 people on no notice at all to show up and do sign waving for Adam Fortney. We had a heck of a good time doing it as well, but it was just about not so much Adam Fortney, who I think has been doing a tremendous job for public safety up there. It wasn't just about that. It was about pushing back against this tactic that has become honestly sickening, to just paint everyone you don't agree with as some right-wing lunatic. It gets incredibly old. So we'll monitor, obviously, what happens in the Snohomish County Sheriff's race. I am hoping, and this is my personal opinion, it is an opinion show after all, that Sheriff Fortney can pull things out because he's done some really good things for public safety, and I would hate to see Snohomish County go backward. All right, let's go all the way over to the other side of the state quickly, and the Spokane mayor's race. Because we talked about this on the show today, and I think we'll revisit the ad momentarily, but just so you have the latest results in that race. So Nadine Woodward, who is the current mayor, a Republican in Spokane, she is trailing Lisa Brown 48% to 52%. Lisa Brown, the Democrat in the race, she's run for a variety of other positions and never won. She served as the head of the Commerce Department under Jay Inslee during the pandemic, which was, of course, a very tricky time for the Commerce Department. And this is an office that Democrats would sure like to have. They don't want people thinking that the eastern side of the state is some Republican stronghold. So they're very, very eager to take the Spokane mayor's office from Republicans. Again, I think 48% to 52%, I think that's too close to really read anything into it. But Mayor Woodward had some, one big self-inflicted wound. She appeared on stage at a prayer service alongside Matt Shea a couple months ago, and it was a prayer service for fire victims. But Matt Shea, who was a former state lawmaker, has been accused of domestic terrorism. His own party threw him out of their caucus. It just wasn't a good look. And Matt Shea is very well known for his extremist tendencies in the Spokane area. And so it just gave Democrats so much campaign ammunition against her. I will say, though, and I'm just going to play it for folks who didn't watch the live show today, again, this is another race where it has been incredibly nasty. I said today that an attack ad that was put out by the Washington State Democratic Party that aired during the Seahawks game a couple days ago is the worst attack ad I've seen of the cycle. Not only was it completely disingenuous, but it used what we think is just a voice actor to pretend to be a fire victim to score political points. So if you didn't see it today, here's that attack ad that came out against Nadine Woodward a couple days ago.
Let's make crime illegal again.
When my childhood home burnt to the ground this summer in the Gray Fire, my family looked to our leaders to help. But Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodward didn't stand with us. Instead, she stood with accused domestic terrorist Matt Shea, praying for fire to consume Spokane. And Nadine Woodward got her wish. Hundreds of homes, just like mine, were destroyed that same day. Spokane, we deserve better. Defeat Nadine Woodward. Return your ballot by Election Day, November 7th. This message paid for by Washington State Democrats.
Yeah, pretty sickening ad. To the extent to which voters believed that or bought into it at all, I don't know. Nicole, you had sent out an email to the Washington State Democratic Party today asking them, was that a real fire victim or a voice actor you paid to pretend to be a fire victim? Any response from our friends at the Washington State Democratic Party?
No response.
Oh, shocking. I don't think, even if it wasn't a paid actor, I don't think they would respond to us before Election Day. So we're monitoring what's happening over in Spokane. We'll also get back to Spokane in a minute as we talk about a proposition that voters had to weigh in on there having to do with homelessness. But I do want to talk quickly about some school board races because that's an issue we have really, really tried to focus on the show. Particularly the Olympia School District, because look, this place is just absolutely a train wreck. I hate to say it any other way, but there's a lot of school districts dealing with these issues of race and social justice and gender seeping into public education, but perhaps nowhere more than the Olympia School District. So there were 3 school board seats. School board position 1 is the one that I think is the most controversial. First of all, there's really no good candidate up that is left that I think would focus on education issues. So Maria Flores is the incumbent. I've watched, unfortunately for me, many an Olympia school board meeting where I've heard her speaking and focusing on all the wrong things, not education. And then, of course, her challenger is Talana Reed, who has been the subject of national headlines. For saying things like this, I think this is a good time to revisit her infamous protest clip.
The police, and it amazes me how those pigs can sit over there and they don't pay attention until we tear it up. So just before I get started, tear everything up in this city until they do what we want them to do.
Yeah, so that person should never made it past the primary. But Nicole, can you pop the election results back up? So right now, Maria Flores, 64% to Talana Reed's 31%. So I don't know. That might be the last time I ever have to play the tear this S up pigs. Maybe tomorrow.
She'll find something else to do.
Right, exactly. So although I don't think either of these women are particularly good options that are going to take, Maria Flores isn't going to take the Olympia School District in a new direction. She's part of the problem. But I will say, heck of a lot better than Talana Reed. All right, District 2 seat on the Olympia School District Board. This one's interesting, and it is also just a little personal. So again, if you're looking at a common sense candidate that is really going to focus more on improving education outcomes, the person for that job would be Frank Dorosher. He is, though, trailing his challenger, Jess Tortolotti-Palumbo, who is the more progressive. I don't know if Tortolotti. I'm really struggling with these two names in particular. That sounds like a type of pasta.
Yeah.
Jess Tortolotti-Palumbo.
I think it might be just lot.
See, guys, This is
Maybe it's
why
for latte.
you do election coverage with us. Do you have this much fun on TV? Whenever I get a name like this, I try to just put a thick accent on it. Totalatte Palumbo. Nicole, can you put those results back up for me?
yeah,
Sorry, I'm so so busy. But she's up 56% to Frank Dorosher's 44%. An interesting thing about Frank Dorosher, and we talked about this on the podcast as well, is he has been vilified, absolutely vilified as some right-wing racist transphobe. Why? Because he came to an event of mine. Remember, I was out collecting signatures for to repeal 5599, which had to do with government-sanctioned kidnapping of your kids, essentially. And he was at my signing event that I had at Cutters Point Coffee in Lacey. And because of that, he was attacked, called a transphobe, as I was, called right-wing and racist. The extent to which that impacted the results so far, I'm not sure. And then if we could just District 4 in the Olympia School District, the incumbent Hillary Seidel, she is up 60% of the vote to 38%. There was also some write-in votes that were cut off there if that percentage isn't adding up for you. Leslie Van Leishout is the challenger. I think she would have been, this seems like it's just too much of a gap to really expect her to be able to get it. But again, you have Hillary Seidel, who's an incumbent, who appears to be, heading back to the school board. So I would say overall, and we'll reassess this on the show tomorrow, really no change for the Olympia School District. I'm glad that Talana Reed isn't going to go back to that position and be in any position with the school district where she's going to be influencing children and policies, but this is just more of the same in the Olympia School District. So I have to imagine that these results are pretty disappointing for some of the parents that were really hoping that that school district would get back to focusing on education and outcomes. All right, I want to go through a couple of propositions and a measure and some really interesting ones. I'm surprised actually we didn't talk about these more on the podcast. A couple of them just must have gone right over my head as I was stewing about other things. So we did, however, talk about Proposition 1 in Seattle because it would triple their current housing levy that expires to pay for affordable housing. So where is that one at right now, Nicole? Yeah, of course, Seattle. Seattle voters are very generous. They are A-OK taxing themselves. So right now, 66% of voters say yes to Proposition 1, 34% say no. Again, we're talking about a tripling of the city's housing levy to raise $970 million over the next 7 years, primarily to build more affordable housing. When I say triple, it would go from 14 cents per $1,000 of assessed home value to 45 cents per $1,000. So if you're the owner of a average price home, medium priced home, you'd go from paying about $108 a year to $360 a year. So, my issue with that is I just don't think, first of all, affordable housing isn't the answer. Affordable housing isn't going to fix what's ailing Seattle. So whenever, increasing the spend or taxes on affordable housing is pitched to people as some sort of part of the solution to homelessness, it just doesn't ring true to me. I mean, we've seen that, we know that. It's not a crisis of people who don't have roofs over their head. It's a crisis of people who are mentally ill, drug addicted, sometimes both. All right, let's get to Measure 1 in the city of Tacoma. This has to do with another controversial issue, pitting kind of landlords against tenants. So supporters, if you look at the list of supporters for Proposition 1, it includes groups like the Democratic Socialists. And so this is really something that would, first of all, landlords would be banned from evicting anyone during cold weather months. Also during the school year, that's something similar to what Seattle did. So again, it's like an example of Seattle policies going down to Tacoma. Also, if you were to raise rent by more than 5%, then they'd have to pay 2 months worth of rent to help relocate a tenant who can't afford the increase. So anyway, thankfully,
why would
it's really
you want to
wild.
get yourself into that?
Why would you? Yeah. So right now, thankfully, it's failing. 49% are voting yes, 51% no. But man, that is just really too close to reach any sort of conclusion.
It's renters.
Yeah, and landlord groups down there said that some of these in some aspects are even more stringent than what we're seeing in Seattle. So if you're scaring the landlords out of Seattle, maybe they thought we could go to Tacoma. I don't know if Tacoma's the place for them, but we'll see how this one shakes out. It's obviously really close. One more, Proposition 1 in Spokane. Really fascinating. Again, how did I not cover this on the show? Producer, where were you? I'm just kidding. What's really fascinating to me is, so this has to do with homelessness, and this is a common sense proposition. It would ban camping within 1,000 feet of schools, parks, playgrounds, and childcare facilities.
I think that's why we didn't talk about it, because it's so common sense silliness and
Right.
mostly
Well,
being supported.
But here's the thing. So right now, 74% of people in Spokane are saying, well, yes, we'd like to ban
Yes.
camping within 1,000 feet of where children are, because that shouldn't be controversial. But it's interesting to see the results of that, and then to see the mayor's race with Nadine Woodward trailing. That's fascinating to me, because if you are really concerned about the homeless crisis, the danger or crime that might come with like sort of a transient population, then it seems to me that you would tend toward the person who's been more pro law enforcement, focused on public safety, which by far would be Nadine Woodward, not Lisa Brown. So that's really interesting to me.
They really emphasized kids, though. And so I think
Yes.
that's the part. If they had said, you just can't camp on the sidewalks, it might have passed, or it might not have had the same results.
Right.
But because it was kids, I think that people tend to take their own kids in their mind and say, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that's true. And again, it is common sense, but I mean, I get not wanting there to be encampments like next to where your kids are, but also we don't want there to be encampments anywhere else either. And so the goal is
a great way to live.
The goal is not out of sight, out of mind. It's to have leaders who are actually getting to the root cause. And I don't think Lisa Brown is that person. Okay, let's get to a couple random ones, shall we? And then we'll go reassess sort of some of the bigger ones and the takeaways. And I'll read some of the comments and questions that you guys had. Some stragglers in the Seattle City Council. Some of these races didn't get as much attention simply because we were so focused on the incumbents and some of the more extreme candidates. But what's going on in Seattle for City Council District 1? Do we have results on that one, Nicole? There we go. So this is West Seattle. Lisa Herbold decided not to run for re-election, the mom with the nose ring. Lisa Herbold, who somehow found herself as chair of the Public Safety Committee, even though she wanted to basically decriminalize all misdemeanors and defund the police. So in this race, you have, let me see here, Rob Saka versus Costa. Rob Saka was really the person that he's an attorney. He worked on the Mayor Bruce Harrell Seattle Police Chief Search Committee. He's really been the person that I think the common sense, like let's focus on crime and safety, that those individuals have supported. So I'm happy to see Rob Saka with 59% of the vote, and Maren Costa, who, this is interesting. I mean, she used to work for Adobe, Amazon, and Microsoft. She calls herself a climate activist, an advisor for startups, and she claims she was illegally fired from Amazon in April of 2020 for, quote, standing up for climate justice and for warehouse workers' safety. She is trailing. So I think it's very good, and Rob Saka would be an excellent addition to the Seattle City Council, especially if he replaces, since the winner of that district will replace Lisa Herbold, who has been an absolute, utter disaster for public safety. Okay, Nicole, which one are we missing here?
5 and 4.
Okay, let's hit it. Let's start with 4, shall we? District 4, City of Seattle. So you have Maritza Rivera, who's the city's deputy director of the Department of Arts and Culture, and she's against Ron Davis, who's a tech entrepreneur. Honestly, with this race in particular, I don't think either one would have been some big change from the status quo. So I wasn't super passionate about this one, but Maritza Rivera is up 56% of the vote to 44% of the vote. In District 5, you have Kathy Moore, who is a former King County Superior Court judge, and Christiana Sumner, who is a social justice advocate and the CEO of an organization called Epiphanies of Equity. So Kathy Moore is winning resoundingly 70% of the vote to Obey Sumner's 30% of the vote. And I think that's very promising, that you have, this is North Seattle, parts of North Seattle, that you saw what really is an activist, and that voters resoundingly are saying that's not what we want anymore. We don't want an activist on the Seattle City Council. We're trying to shed activists. And I will say, of Seattle, so far so good. I don't feel terrible about the election results. Now, I've been disappointed. I remember many a Shama Sawant race where she was down like 12 points, and I'm like, wow. And it's like the doves are singing, and then slowly as the days go by, she's just ticking up. It's like, wow, they're get out the vote efforts to the homeless encampments. We're really working for them. Let's see, there was one other random one I just wanted to talk about quickly. The North Shore School Board Position 3. You might be like, yeah, that is incredibly random, Brandi. But this is a race that was and has been talked a lot about by our friend Ari Hoffman in light of what's happening in the Middle East, because Han Tran, who is winning right now handily 59% of the vote to 41% for Miriam Juritz, Han Tran has been accused of anti-Semitism and really being kind of wrapped up in this whole anti-Semitic pro-Hamas movement that we're seeing right now. Ari Hoffman has been very, very critical of Han Tran having anything to do with the education of children, given some of the positions that she's taken. There have been dueling op-eds put out, defending her, against her. But right now, Han Tran, I don't know if those came just too late in the race to really change anyone's mind. But she has had some concerning statements about Israel and its existence and about Jewish people. And so she is winning handily. So I would say if we want to look at some of, again, and I can take some questions and comments from the live stream today, but just to recap, I think some things that I'm excited about after this first ballot drop. Andrew Lewis isn't winning, so I'm tickled by that. Sorry, Andrew Lewis. Doesn't stop our lawsuit against the city of Seattle to get records related to his June vote to kill the drug ordinance. But Lewis right now, 44% of the vote to Bob Kettle's 56% of the vote, although I will say I have yet to have Bob Kettle on the show, not for lack of trying. I am concerned about his campaign's kowtowing to activists at The Stranger, which we talked about on the show this week. The Stranger did this article attacking some of the people who'd endorsed Bob Kettle's campaign, like Ann Davison, the Seattle city attorney, who's a very reasonable, rational person. They called her a Trumper attorney and right wing, and the campaign didn't push back against that at all. So I'm a little worried that I'm seeing shades of coward in Bob Kettle, similar to Andrew Lewis, where like, you're not going to push back against the crazy people. We really need someone in that position that does not care what the crazy people think. And so I hope if Bob Kettle pulls it out, maybe he can learn from some of those missteps on the campaign trail and recognize that he needs to really not just push back against the crazies. He needs to genuinely not acknowledge what they say and what they do. Also, when it comes to another really key race that hopefully is a bellwether for what Seattle voters are thinking, Tammy Morales down in District 2. This is a community, a lot of elderly Asian Americans who've been victimized at insane rates, who are dealing with a homeless crisis, who had to push back against a big homelessness complex that was going to be built down the street from them, and they weren't given any say, and Tammy Morales was nowhere to be found. She's really been Shama Sawant light on public safety issues. She's trailing Tanya Wu 46% of the vote to 54% of the vote, and so I think that is really certainly a good sign that you have these incumbents that are trailing. But again, anything can change when you have this kind of vote by mail system where the ballots that we're seeing tonight are a lot of the early ballots that came in. And so what they do is they collect them, and then their first ballot drop on Tuesday night, 8 p.m. is those ballots that were cast early. And then throughout the rest of the weeks, the next 2, 3, 4 days and beyond, they'll continue to count ballots coming in. All right, Nicole, are you adding comments anywhere, or should I just go straight into the live chat?
I'm working on that at the bottom.
Oh, thank you. See, we're on
the show sheet there. Yeah,
just a live election coverage.
Like,
oh wow, we got some super chats. Yeah, well, we were running a little bit late, and I saw super chats coming in. I'm like, they better not take those super chats back because we're late. Leland Taylor says 50, because I said in the chat, I said, we're late because I'm drinking alcohol before I bring you these election results. Leland Taylor says, you're going to need more alcohol then, lots more. This should help a little. He gave us $50. Thank you. Yes, that does help. Larry Olson with a $20 super chat. Brandi, Nicole, thank you so much for all you've done this year to continue to do daily. No, thank you. Jack Hartstock with a $9.99 super chat. Fortney, time to rally. Yes, I agree. Certainly, I'm hoping that he can come back and some of those late pushes that we did to try to help him out a little bit, not help him out, but even the playing field. You got the mainstream media in Snohomish County absolutely vilifying him. We just cannot let that happen. All right, let me see here. Two Ladies Midwest Adventures says, Brandi, your giggle is infectious. If you can't giggle on election night, what can you do? Let me see here. Mo said, I think you should talk more about renters versus owners in Seattle and how that affects votes on property tax increases. That's very, very true. It's a good point. When you have voters in Seattle that are so willing seemingly to tax, quote unquote, themselves, you still get a ballot with that decision, even if you don't pay property taxes. Now, you could say that that property tax would be reflected on the owner, the landlord, who might pass it down eventually to the tenant. So if you have tenants that are really thinking that way, like, even though this isn't my home, that could raise my rent eventually, then that could be a little different. But I will say, even as a renter, I never even really thought about that. I mean, I was out there just denying all the tax increases anyway. So my landlord should have given me a discount for all my votes to deny tax increases. All right, let's see here. Crafty Grandma says, I'm late to the party. I was doing some crafting for my niece's mermaid birthday party. Crafty Grandma, you're focused on the things that really matter. Let me see here. Matt Gilbert, Saka is the better choice. Yeah, Matt Gilbert, you're over in District 1. You're not going to miss Lisa Herbold on the Seattle City Council. I think Rob will be better. And really all you need is 5 common sense people on the Seattle City Council. That's all you need. And really, Sarah Nelson, I think, has been really great. She's in one of the citywide positions, so she wasn't on the ballot. And that's kind of what she said, too, is Seattle voters, give me some people who I can work with on public safety. And sometimes it's not so much what you can pass, it's what you can kill. It's what you can keep from passing in Seattle that's really important. And that's kind of why one of the reasons I've been so opposed to one-party rule and Democrats in Olympia continuing to sort of increase their majorities is they just pass through whatever comes to their mind without any checks and balances whatsoever. And that's just not healthy. I mean, when you're sitting there grading your own test, you're giving yourself an A+ every time. And that's what Democrats in Olympia are doing, and they're completely blind to the consequences of their policies. And so hopefully, if these results hold in Seattle, you will have a majority of members with common sense who actually genuinely care about public safety. And man, wouldn't that be nice? And no Shama Sawan, who, by the way, you know what she was doing today? She, at the 2 p.m. council meeting, introduced a resolution to call for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. You know what I love about that, though? You know what happened, Nicole?
What?
Do you know what? You didn't follow it? What happened when Shama Sawan introduced her resolution?
No.
No one seconded it. So it just died. How wonderful is that? But then all her little activist friends who always gather, which I'm hoping we get rid of him or them when she goes too.
Right, it's a show.
They created this big stir, and the council had to, what do you call it? What do you call it when you're taking a break, whatever, momentarily. So that's good. That's a positive sign. No one seconded it because that you don't have anything to do with the ceasefire. Get back to business.
It's all for show.
Why am I stuttering today? It's just like
because
too
it's late and you're drinking coffee at 9 p.m.
Business. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's see here. I want to get to a couple more comments, and then I'm going to give you an overarching feelings and thoughts about the results so far. And then, of course, we'll have some in-depth analysis. We'll have some conversations. I would really like to get Alicia Perkins back on the show tomorrow, Nicole. Okay. Our Olympia mom, who's been trying like hell to fix things down there. I think she's probably drinking right now. Alicia's probably drinking right now. Let's ask if she can go back on the show tomorrow. All right. D-Man in Seattle says, has Seattle finally figured out that activist is not a resume enhancement? Let's hope so. Let me see.
Harry Hoffman commented on the Patreon video saying it's the first time he's been cautiously optimistic about
I love
Seattle.
that, Ari Hoffman. That is good. I mean, and I'll just end it with this. I don't know. I have to set my coffee cup aside so I don't hit it. I got my coffee mug. I was like not using it. I have been cautiously optimistic about Seattle for many election cycles now, and I'm always disappointed.
Always
Disappointed. So there's this part of me that really wants to believe that you look at everything happening, and how can anyone who loves the city not vote for change? How can anyone who truly loves the city more than they love their political party, more than they love their ideology, how can they not vote for change? How can it be okay for anyone of any political persuasion? How can you be okay with people dying out on the streets right in front of you with a needle in their arm? How can you be okay seeing the number of boarded up storefronts in what used to be an incredibly vibrant downtown, an incredibly vibrant, beautiful major city in America? I mean, that just breaks my heart.
It is heartbreaking.
And we used to, when I first moved here, 15 years ago, we had the activism, we had the Occupy movement and the anti-capitalists and all that, but we still had a beautiful downtown. We still had a downtown that wasn't overrun by drug use, by homelessness, by mental illness, where you could walk down, you could go out at night and not worry about being the victim of violent crime. I mean, did it have some? Yes, it's a major city, but there was a point where the activism wasn't all consuming. And then in 2020, it started to become all consuming. And it focused on things like race and gender to the point where even, people who used to be rational progressives thought, well, I guess I have to just cave because I don't want to be called racist. I don't want to be called a transphobe or whatever it is. And now I hope this is the beginning of people saying, like we say on the show all the time, you could call me whatever you want. I'm going to stand up for what makes sense. And in this case, I really hope Seattle voters, what we're seeing now is them standing up for the city that they love.
And the
but
last
I won't
second,
hold my breath.
A last second super chat here from
last second
AV
super
Geek
chats are
Joe.
always AvGeek Joe. What does he have to say?
$2. New council can save Seattle from becoming
San Francisco
Fran North.
And you know what I love about you, AvGeek Joe? I think you're progressive. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, all your comments and we've had interactions on social media. I'm pretty sure that Joe is progressive. But and you can be progressive, but actually understand that real progress doesn't have to come at the expense of public safety. Real progress doesn't have to pit people of different socioeconomic statuses against one another. Real progress doesn't have to push white people down to lift people of color up. Real progress is doing the most good for the most amount of people. And so I'll never lump all the progressives into some of these hellhole policies and what has resulted from it. This is really a small fringe group of activists that too many people have kowtowed to for way too long. Mm-hmm. And you know what? There has never been a better time to ditch the far left fringe. Now that they've shown us they're basically neo-Nazis in disguise.
Right.
If you were looking for an excuse that you have not been able to find so far in Seattle of the many, many excuses they've given you to ditch the far left activist fringe, them hating Jewish people, that gives you a really good excuse to stop caring what they think.
Got
All
one
right.
more. You want to read the last one?
Super chats are coming in.
Yeah.
It's from Amira Lanova. Ryan Valona. 1999
I
super chat. Wow. Covering elections independently is so much more fun than being on TV. What needs to happen is personal lawsuits against the people whose names are on attack pieces. Until people start suing for defamation of character, nothing is going to change. There isn't enough public outcry against these. Yeah, I totally agree. But here's the thing, and man, we've got a lot of people on the live chat. I just feel like continuing to talk to you guys. We talked about this on the live show earlier today, and I think this is worthy of debate. And in fact, maybe it should be our subscriber daily poll question tomorrow. I don't want the government. I don't want the government being the one to decide what is acceptable or not acceptable on a campaign mailer. What is factual or not factual? Because I can just see that if you have the government enforcing it, you're inserting this room for bias. Because we talked about the mayor of Spokane ad today, which was crazy, basically suggesting that she wanted her entire city to burn to the ground.
Right.
That's really insane stuff. But is the government the right entity to police that? I tend to think no, because, for instance, when the government polices social media, what happens? Well, they suppress speech on one side more than they suppress speech on the other side. But this is a good alternative where and I don't know how much protection there is or what the bar would be to prove defamation, but if you're an individual who has got, just blatant falsehoods levied against you, should you be able to sue? Are you able to sue? And then it takes it out of the hands of the government and into that private sort of legal, civil area.
Yeah,
so,
it's tough.
I mean, it is tough. And both sides do it. Both sides do it.
It happens a lot. All over. I was thinking about family court, and you can lie in family court and somebody just has to prove you wrong. Like there's no consequence to lying in all of these different.
There should be. Well, you can't lie if you're under oath.
Not if you're under oath, but you typically don't have to be under oath in courts like that.
Nicole, will you raise your right hand? I'm not joking.
I know you're not. What do you?
You see that copy of the Constitution? Will you grab that?
No.
Grab it.
I don't know what you're going to make me promise.
Grab the Constitution. It's the blue book. 2 over from the big U. Okay, put your right hand on it.
It's on it.
But now raise your left hand, or put your left hand on it. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me.
No.
I swear to tell the truth.
I swear to tell the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God when appropriate.
Nicole Thompson. Am I the world's best boss and definitely not stressful or nitpicky at all?
Oh, not at all.
Oh, good. Well, you said it under oath, so that must be true.
I had a little, did you hear my little when appropriate at the end there?
When appropriate? Yeah.
I thought
okay,
good. When appropriate.
Oh, man, this is way too much fun tonight.
Oh, man, starting to, it's kind of like the King 5 at the Needle on New Year's right now.
They drink. We didn't drink, by the way.
We did not
drink, but we're having fun despite a rocky beginning. This has been fun, guys.
Rocky.
So if we have a lot of people on the live chat, and I'm assuming maybe you haven't watched our live show during the week, so please let me give you a pitch for it. We do an hour-long live show, noon to 1, Monday through Thursday. We do a special Sunday show just for subscribers called Sundays with Subscribers. And if this is your first time watching, the whole point of this is to reinvigorate the 70% of people who are sane in society, to get them talking about politics, to get them to be part of the conversation, and to get them not to give a damn when the fringes label them, name call them, try to bully them out of the conversation. Because, like I said, the vast majority of people are reasonable, rational. They want public safety. They want the government to keep its grubby hands off their money unless they really, really need it. And we need to platform those voices. We need to platform those conversations, and everyone else, including Shama Sawant and Andrew Lewis, and they can just go away. All right, that has been it for our live election coverage. Who knew we could have so much fun? We'll be back on the live show tomorrow at noon with some more in-depth analysis of these races. And as I said, on election night, the way our elections work, you really can't read too much into the results unless there's a significant gap, because those are early voting results, and then the ballots will continue to be counted. So sometimes we don't have concrete results until Thursday, even Friday, or beyond. I'm gonna go to, even though I'm not a big prayer person, Nicole is, I'm gonna pray for Sheriff Adam Fortney tonight before I sleep on the sofa bed here at the studio. So he's gonna get my thoughts and prayers. But Seattle, I just want to say this before we end, Nicole, I'm very proud of you so far. For once, I feel as if you're not going to let me down. So I'm going to rest well knowing that Seattle might be finally trying to save itself. All right, that has been it for today's election night coverage. Thank you to everyone who ran. I don't say that enough. I'm just rambling, and we're going to end soon. Being a political candidate in today's climate is hellish. I know it is, because we see everything that you endure. So everyone, regardless of whether I agree with your politics or not, who stepped up to run for political office, from school board races to mayoral races, you really are owed a little bit of an applause, because that's a hard thing to do. And we appreciate that, even if we're hard on you, but that's what you're signing up for. All right, that has been today's election coverage. We will see you back on the live show tomorrow at noon. If you have not become an Undivided subscriber and you want to support our independent show, you can do that by signing up for $5 a month at undividedpod.com.